Welcome to the Business Growth Club podcast. I've got an amazing guest today, and we are going to be talking about building with boundaries. I've got Mahnaz Sharif, and she's going to talk about what she does and how building with boundaries is really important in as a woman in business, as a mum in business. But before we get into that, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Hi, Danny. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm delighted to be here and such a great topic that we have to discuss. So I can't wait to dig into that. Yeah, my name is Mahnaz and my business is Build with Boundaries. Like you said, I help mums to boost their efficiency and so they can thrive in both business and in life. Because everything that happens in our personal life has a way of finding its way into our business world. So I like to help mums to integrate all of those different areas and different segments of their life, if you like, so they can all work together and it doesn't feel like there's friction there. It's more like working things together in a much more joyful and easy way because, we only have so much time that we have in the day and so many things that we can focus on. So, boosting your efficiency and being very, very intentional with how we use that time is so important, especially for mums who have got so many different plates that they're spinning at the same time.
Yes, definitely. And I bet when people are listening to this, I bet they're thinking, oh, so there's another mentor that's very similar. And we are similar, but we're also very different in the approach that we have with our clients. But it's why I've loved this connection that I've built with you, Manaz, because we've collaborated, haven't we? And we're both mentors. So we know how it is as a mum, as a business owner, and we know how it is in terms of building boundaries as well. And it's what made me want you to come on the podcast because it is such an important topic that I know a lot of women in particular need to work on. So if we do work on our boundaries, what can that look like, especially as a mum in business? What can it look like to really work on them? Like what can the impact be in our life and business?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think it's very difficult to sometimes think about boundaries because they don't feel like they're the most attractive thing. And if
Yeah.
anything, it almost feels like you're putting something in a cage. You're either putting yourself outside the cage or you are inside the cage, and it just feels restrictive.
Mm,
So I like to think of boundaries in a different way. And I like to think of them as really helping us to stand in our power. And they can do that in so many different ways. And they are so helpful because, first we have to understand and kind of just really get our head around the fact that boundaries are healthy and they're good for us. And often we have boundaries whether or not we choose to see them or not. Because if we have a relaxed boundary, it's still like there is a line that separates everything. That's kind of the definition of a boundary. And even if we're not focusing on that line and we're not making it effective, it's still there. And maybe your boundaries are getting walked on. Maybe people are not respecting them. Maybe people around you don't even know what they are or understand them. So there can be so many different, it's almost like having all these layers that we have to work through with boundaries because it's one thing to know what might be helpful for you. Then it's another to set the intention to actually have that boundary and set it. Then we have to like talk to people about it, right? We need to communicate it because otherwise we know our boundary and that's it. And it's
mm,
not effective then because depending on what type of boundary it is, for example, with your clients or with your family, they may need to be aware of that. And actually, over time, it can definitely be much more respected to have those boundaries because it helps you to respect as well. So yeah, there's the communicating piece, and then it's like maintaining them. And like even through time, and as we know, everything changes, right? The seasons change, time changes, time is ticking away, everything is changing around us. Nature shows us that as well. And when we look at ourselves, we are changing too. We just can't see that. We're not the same person we were 12 months ago. We may not be the same person we were 6 months ago. So therefore, the things that are happening to us will then
mm.
affect what's going to be most effective for us. So it's almost like we want to bring those boundaries in alignment, and we want to keep on ensuring that they are effective for us, like now and then in the future. So having to review those boundaries is another like really important one. And I think that's another piece that, you know, once we do some work, we think, oh, that's it, done, we can draw the line underneath. And that's not really the case for many, many things. And I see for boundaries it being like something that is very long term, and it is something that is with you. And it's okay for them to change as well. You know, like giving ourselves that permission that once we set things up, we can try it out, right? That's the best way for anything. And I'm sure as the you know, super planner that you are, you see that as well. Like you can plan so
Yeah.
much, and you really have to test things out, and then you might plan again, and you might get better and better at planning. And the same goes for boundaries, because you know, we can't know everything about it before we begin, and it's almost like just pressing that go button, and starting the journey is where our real insights and experience shows us. And you know, that is what happens. And we are generally very intuitive people as well, that once we get going, we'll be like, oh, I could do this, I could improve that. But when we're not on that treadmill yet, and we're just in fear of even trying it, then we have no way of gaining that information and all the insights that might come.
That's so true. I feel like you've hit the nail on the head for my journey in business, actually, because like this year, well, no, we're in a different year now. I can't keep up. In 2023, I moved house. My husband had surgery, and that was a very testing time that showed me I needed certain boundaries that weren't in place that I didn't need before, because I'd not experienced such a big house move. Because backtrack over 10 years ago, the last time I moved house, I had no children. I had no business. I didn't even have like, do you know, like the essentials you have in a home. I didn't own a washing machine. Like, we bought it and it was delivered to the new house. It was easy. We didn't have to move everything. So it was a very big transition. And I kind of forgot that in the moment. And every friend I had was going, don't forget, you've just gone through this big event. I'm like, yeah. But boundaries really did play a part in the navigation of my business last year and life. And with that, it did present some challenges as well. Do you find there's some common big challenges that business owners, mums in business, and basically those juggling mums go through when they start to set some boundaries? So they might think, right, okay, this is the problem I'm facing. This is the boundary I'm going to set, and then off they go. What are the most common challenges that they face when they decide to do that?
I think one of the big ones that comes up, and we can completely understand this and empathize as both being mums and having a family and raising a family, is, you know, where do we separate that kind of business and life and work, you know, that work life and business, home life and work? How do we even go about that? And sometimes we
Yeah.
need to have a bit of flexibility in there. But at the same time, if we don't have kind of clear boundaries on, for example, how many hours we work, or what days we work and what days therefore we don't work, you know, work, I often see, you know, mums are there sitting at 10 o'clock at night with their laptop, or they're working the weekends because they've just not got enough done. And sometimes the answer isn't about doing more. You know, I found that personally in my experience too. So about a year ago, I decided I've always had this real desire to work a 4-day week. I always wanted to have a Friday off. So when I was back in the corporate world, I used to work Monday to Thursday, and I had Fridays off because my kids actually get half day at school on every Friday. So I always had to incorporate that in. Um, and I had that desire to do that even now that I have my own business. But there was something that was always stopping me because, you know, my kids are a little bit older. I can work on, they don't need to babysit them. And I could work on the Friday if I wanted to. However, by me actually saying that, well, I'm not going to wait, what am I waiting for? Like, what is
Yeah.
going to happen? Well, nothing. I am the one who has to give myself that permission. So last year, it was probably about this time, what, January 23. And I stopped working the Friday. So I was like, okay, well, what does that look like? And I decided, you know, to create more of a structure in terms of what I'm doing for the rest of the time. So when I am working, what it did for me, and I didn't realize this, and I wish I would have done it sooner if I had known, right? Because that's the wonder of hindsight.
Yeah.
It made me so much more focused and intentional with the time that I did have. And like I know that I can get so much work done. It can, and many people can not get that work done in 7 days if they were working. And I know I could do that in 4 days. And I don't work on a Friday, and I don't work or give up my weekends. Um, we don't need to kind of live by other people's rules, and just being able to give ourselves that permission to try that out and see. And when we put that intention in, like I didn't realize how incredibly powerful it would be, because not only did it help me to reduce my hours and create those boundaries more strictly, because then I just automatically, it's always I don't work a Friday, right? I know I can say that. But it also meant that the time that I was working, I had to be really strategic. Like, well, how am I going to spend my time? Because I can go down a rabbit hole of lots of different things, and we all have like so many ideas and projects that are going on in our business too. And then obviously we can't forget working with clients, creating assets, freebies, or online courses, or whatever things that you're focusing on that you want to put out there. And we can't do and then there's marketing. Like marketing is just never ending, you know. We have to constantly showing up. So like, what do you put in and what do you not? It just feels like it's really overwhelming. But by doing less time in my day, it actually made me even more focused and productive with the time that I had. And I think that's definitely the one that comes to mind, is that because, you know, we could fall into this overworking trap and kind of spending longer on things than is needed. And we're human, you know, that's what happens. We all do it. And I'm certainly not perfect either, but it's understanding, you know, how you work best, and being able to implement and do take action that actually improve wherever you are, whatever your kind of baseline is, to make improvements in efficiency so that you can be even more productive with that time. And at the end of the day, whatever time you have left, you get to choose like what you do with it then. You know, it could be that you have particular things going on with your family. You know, we are the sandwich generation, where we can have elderly parents or children, or sometimes both. And, you know, I've been there with two kids who were under 10, and a mother who was chronically ill and then later diagnosed with cancer. And then, you know, I had to be there for everybody, and I know what that feels like. And I don't want to see other mums putting themselves into that trap of overworking, because I've been there and I had to pull myself back and out of that. And it's really hard and challenging. And efficiency is my core value. So I actually do it much more naturally than a lot of people do. So I can't even begin to imagine how much challenges and how much struggle somebody would face, you know, when that is not their natural ability to be able to make things easier and more efficient and effective. So yeah, that kind of tells you why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think it's just kind of that is something that I see even now, you know, overworking and just doing more and longer, and just, I mean, it all stems from different things. And when we're focusing on always nurturing and caring for other people, we often can't see what it is that we need.
Mm.
Not that good at sharing that with ourselves. So I don't know if you what you think about that, Danny.
I agree with that. I do. And again, like I've been through exactly a similar thing. As my business has changed and evolved, I've had to change like my schedule, what that looks like. And your day's Fridays, my day's Wednesdays. Because I set the boundary last year. I'm not going to work Wednesdays. I want to do a 4-day working week. But then I just didn't stick to it, because saying it just wasn't enough. It was about, yeah, now it's in front of my mind, is that actually putting that into action. So thankfully I've done that now. I mean, I am going to be doing a networking event every month on the last Wednesday, but it's a little bit different because it's networking nourish, it's called, by my friend Nina Rainey, and we basically have beautiful food, listen to a guest speaker, and it's in a home, so it's so relaxing. So it doesn't feel like work. So that's once out of every month, and then I have hypnotherapy with her. So I get to really experience some, I guess, relaxation and therapy at the same time. So it's really good. But it's not the physical, like, endless day of work where you're on calls doing client work and, doing the admin, whatever it is that needs doing. Because there's always a list, there's always a long list of to-dos. We're never going to tick it off, are we? But it's recognizing, and like you mentioned, intentions, and I'm a big believer in setting intentions and being intentional with your time. It made a massive difference for me. Because if I go back a few years ago, and I see a lot of business owners doing it now, consuming loads of content from coaches, from mentors, learning all the things, but actually not spending the time to implement it, or doing other things that need to be done in the business, which is why you feel so fast, that you can get overwhelmed and burn out, because there's not boundaries in place to say, this is what, this is how I'm being intentional with my time. And I do think it's a massive challenge that I see a lot, that we all need to always work on and improve, especially over time as things change. So if we are listening to this and like, that sounds like me, oh, I'd love to work a 4-day week, and oh, I need boundaries and I don't have intentions. How would you say is what would be your advice to get started? What would be the how of getting started to implement some boundaries?
I think the first one that we can always start with is having a very clear start and end times for our work. And, obviously you can do that on repeat however many days you work. And to me, that's almost like placing these bookends on either end. And then what we do within that is like, that's where, we can choose and we can be that CEO and decide what our focus is. But having those two set very, very clearly so that we don't, sometimes maybe starting work might be harder for you than ending. It obviously depends on your unique circumstances. And some people find it easier to leave because they might be going for a school run and they have to leave at like a certain time, and other
Yeah,
people, or as children get older, when you don't need to do that anymore, for example, then that can be the one that, well, they're older, I don't need to pick them up, I don't need to bring them home, I don't need to make them something to eat because they're just going to come and grab a snack. Those things might change. And I think just being very aware of what you want those 2 points in the day to look like. And that's a great place to start, because sometimes just the simplest of things, like you said, it's okay, having that intention is great, but we actually have to implement it and we have to take action on it. And until we do that, we are just saying we have a boundary about it, but we're not actually doing it. So, sometimes people are able to just set that intention and then go ahead and do it. And other times there's lots of other things that might come in the way that then prevent you from taking that action. So really being kind to yourself, because, you don't have to implement things the same as everybody else does. You're completely unique, and just being caring, as you would be to a friend, and trying to understand why that might be and what kind of things might be helpful for you to then make that happen. Because if it hasn't happened so far, does that mean that you need some kind of support with that? Would that be helpful? And often we don't really seek support, and because we just think that we should be able to do it, right? And
yeah. Or
we should.
sometimes see it as a weakness. I find this with parents. Like, I've had clients who are parent coaches, and they struggle to get clients in because the parents don't want to invest in support as a parent, because then it feels like we've failed as a parent. And maybe business owners feel the same, or when we need therapy we feel the same, and it's strength to get the help.
Absolutely. And it takes a lot more courage and bravery to say, I need to speak to this person, and I need to, whatever that might look like. It might be a mentor like you, Danny, but it might be that, they need to get some help in the house. It could take different forms. But what is it that would be helpful for you? What kind of support would make a difference to you? And being able to do that, it is brave and it is a sign of strength for sure. And I think we need to just start flipping that, because otherwise we just play games in our mind, and it just creates more doubt, because at the end of the day, we just feel like we are not good enough because we've not been able to do this, we've not been able to do that. We should know better. We should be able to show our kids that we can do this. And you absolutely can. But when we, great example to come to mind is, when our child comes to us and says, I can't do this, we actually thank them for telling us and help them then with what they can do. When we send
Yeah,
them to school, we say, if you need help, make sure you ask the teacher, put
correct.
your hand up. Like, we teach it, right? But we find it really difficult to do ourselves. So if we think about that, in that respect, I think it's really helpful, because your heartstrings are going with this. You've got this child who can't open their lunchbox, for example, and you know that you've taught them to ask for help, so they'll ask for help. So, will the same thing should apply to us?
Yeah, we've
Why?
got to model that behaviour, don't we, really? So that then they learn better from, I love this saying because it's so true, but monkey see, monkey do. Because it's true. And I say it all the time to my husband, like what we do is a
Yeah,
mirror of how our kids will behave as well, because they're watching and learning. And speaking of getting help, you've created something that can help us with the boundary clock. Please tell us about that.
I have indeed. Yes. So if you are not sure where your boundaries are, right? I mean, who knows where their boundaries are sitting right now at this time? It's very, very difficult to kind of create that snapshot. So I have created a boundary clock worksheet, and this is literally a clock, and you have this to print off and actually create your own boundary clock. And it's a really fun way. I guide you through of like how to actually do this, and all the parts and segments, if you like, in your life are in this clock. And what you're going to do is work through that, and you will also get more tips and insights into what boundaries can be. And hopefully all of this information is very practical to help you to see where you are just now, and even like the weakest parts, so that you can actually look at it and say, right, that makes sense. And it probably will make sense to you, but it's very difficult to visualize boundaries. So this is a really great tool, because it's a lovely exercise. You can get away from all the tech, go away and just sit and reflect, and take this time for yourself and get a real insight into your personal boundary clock, and uncover things that might actually be a little bit hidden for you even now. So I will share that link with you, Danny, and it's a free download. You can just get the download, and I've created a video to explain as well. So I'm very much all about guiding people in, so that they can find what they need out of it. And yeah, I hope it will be really powerful for your listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. That's amazing that you've created that. Look, sounds fun as well, and very visual, which is great. Thank you so much. How can we connect with you if someone's listened to this and wants to know more? How can they come and find you?
Well, you can check out my website, buildwithboundaries.com. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do go and check me out there, and feel free to connect with me or DM me and say hello. Let me know that you've listened to Danny's podcast, and always great to connect with people that I'm on a podcast with, because it's just our conversations and stories are what help us see each other. And I imagine that you've got a wonderful audience, Danny. We've got such a great connection as well. So if you feel that way, then please do come and check me out on LinkedIn, send me a request. And of course, I've got my podcast as well, Build with Boundaries podcast, so you can tune in and gain some more insights.
Yes, and as always, there'll be some links to go and find Mahnaz and connect with her in every place that we've got in the show notes and the description. And finally, the question that I asked all my guests: what would be your biggest tip for being organised in business?
Oh, biggest tip would be, I think this is maybe like really obvious, but it's planning. Like,
Yeah,
I'm a serial planner, and just planning everything in advance and takes that pressure off. So for me, like, I can be organized when I'm doing things, but if I already know what it is that I'm doing and I have it planned out, it makes my life so much easier. It takes the stress and pressure off, and I know I have a plan, right? So I can then rest over the weekend and not be have my head spinning thinking about all the things that are on my list. So I would say planning is always like really key, and it comes into like you can apply that to every area of your life as well. So it's not just about business, it can help you with everything that you're doing. So that's why I think it's really, really powerful.
Well, I won't disagree with that because it's what I'm all about.
I thought you'd like it, Danny.
Yes, I do. And I guess it ties into what you were saying about boundaries and setting intentions. It's the planning is part of that. It's part of the boundaries we set, isn't it? So thank you for sharing. I love that question. It sometimes puts people on the spot, but you did great. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a great pleasure to have you. Definitely go and check out Mahnaz, and she's got so much to share. And that's it for now. I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, Danny.